Claude have just turned on organic discovery of apps. This is a huge moment. It is the biggest moment since the launch of the ChatGPT App Store. You can now get your app surface directly inside conversations at the exact moment of intent. When a user is planning, buying, building, ready to act, it is about you making sure your app appears over your competitors. This means no more relying on users visiting a directory or knowing your app exists. Your app can appear exactly for a prompt that you want it to. And of course, early movers are getting the most unfair advantages because you are compounding your ability to appear for intents if you have the tools available now. We've been building towards this moment for the last 6 months. We've tracked every single Claude connector, every touch point, every signal Claude is using to rank and surface apps. This means we have the largest database of how organic discovery is actually working inside Claude. And today we're releasing everything that we've learned. I'm giving a full walkthrough of how organic discovery is actually operating right now inside Claude, which apps are winning, and how can you optimize so that your app appears for your target prompts over your competitors. Okay, so the moment is here. Organic discovery is live inside Claude. It is a huge day, and we're going to cover everything that you need to know about this announcement and how you can start to organically appear for the moments of intent. This is the announcement. We're going to go through this in a moment. First of all, just in terms of what I wanted to cover. So first of all, I'm going to go through what happened. This is everything that you need to know to understand what has happened and what the announcement means and everything that Claude has mentioned. I'm then going to cover organic discovery. How is that actually working inside Claude today? What are we seeing? We're running huge at-scale tests on this, as we have been doing for the last 6 months. So we'll share everything that we're seeing. I'm then going to go through how can you actually see if you're appearing. So let's say you have a connector, or you want to track a competitor, for example. How can you actually start to understand getting visibility and understanding if you appear and stuff like that? And then I want to talk about how do you actually improve. So obviously you don't just want to understand the visibility, you want to make sure that you can actually improve your ranking over time. So we're going to cover that as well. Now, in terms of the announcement, really interesting announcement. There's a couple of things that are interesting in here. I think the first thing to mention is actually the fact that they went live, interestingly, with a lot of consumer apps. So you can notice here, this is like AllTrails, Instacart, Audible, TripAdvisor, Intuit, etc. These are all consumer applications, and actually Claude has previously focused more on the B2B side, which is obviously interesting because I think it shows that they are pushing more to consumer. Now, for the enterprise that we're working with, and for many other people that we've spoken to, lots of companies are now thinking, okay, I want to have my app live inside Claude. Now, that's obviously very interesting, and I think you can see sort of like, Claude is maybe starting to think a little bit more about B2C. OpenAI is definitely thinking more about the B2B side. So maybe we're seeing a slight level of convergence here in terms of their focus. But nonetheless, it's very interesting as it means that for both the B2C applications and B2B applications, Claude is relevant and you can start to appear organically. Now, in terms of the main announcement around this new paradigm of discovery, you can now dynamically appear inside conversations. And so this is the part of the announcement that's really, really important. I'll just read it out for anyone that's listening by the audio. So connectors can now dynamically show up in conversations. We've also changed how connectors show up in conversations. Claude now suggests the right app for what you're doing, like finding a reservation, adding a grocery cart, identifying it's a flight. And it's working from what you've told it. So your preferences, your context, your conversation. This all happens inside your conversation. So ask Claude to recommend a hike. It will recommend AllTrails. That matches your preferences. You can then refine the recommendation further, but ask for something shorter, more scenic, or dog-friendly without leaving the thread. When more than one connector could help you answer the question, Claude lets you see more of them, and then you can choose. Now, this is, like I said, the beginning of a new discovery paradigm. We've expected this to come for the last 6 months and have been preparing for it. So I'm not surprised that it is here. But it's very exciting because it means that we leave this old paradigm of discovery. We've had a lot of people in the ecosystem talking around how it is just archaic, that you're having to go to these connector stores, go to the app store, find an app. That means that from a business, it's obviously a big change because, right now, before this was live, you'd have to go to this kind of directory, right? So many people in Claude aren't even aware that this is live, and you won't even necessarily know to connect to any of these. And even if you do, you might not understand the one that's best for you and your intent. And this is actually how it's always been. It's like the same as driving people to make an app download or driving people to go to a website. You're having to spend a lot of marketing budget to get there, right? Whereas now, because you're actually prompting and you're able to describe your intent, it creates this new and much more interesting paradigm for solves problems for the user. You don't have to go and find apps. The apps come to you. Solves a problem for the brand. You don't have to, go and find a user separately and get them to download and then meet their intent. You can actually appear when the intent is met. So it's a very interesting new paradigm and something that I think everyone has been really, really excited about. Now, the big thing then becomes how do you make sure that you appear for your moments of intent? And that's what we're going to cover later today. Now, let's then go through what this actually looks like in some examples. So I've got a couple of different ranges of examples, and I'll talk you through just some of the things that we're seeing and some of the things that it's important to be aware of. So this is an example of where I've given an intent around a project board, and you can see here that I've said, I need to create a project board for a product launch with owners, timelines, statuses, dependencies, and a way to flag items at risk. Now, I've gone for sort of a project management, project board kind of task. And so I know there's multiple connections here, which is why it's quite a good example. You can see here that you then get a list of potential connectors. So I've not mentioned any brand, and it's just given me potential ones that I want to use. It gives a name, a description. You can just connect directly there. Now, this is the new primitive for organic discovery. This is like ranking top in the links, right? You want to make sure that you have you want to make sure, first of all, that you're in this list. So if you're not in this list, you're not getting this organic discovery and getting chosen. When someone then sees this list, they can obviously connect to and use that particular app. Additionally, what this shows is it shows a ranking. So you can see here that you are now needing to actually make sure you're ranking well in that list. You can assume, like with every other discovery paradigm, those that are at the top of the list are the most trusted and may get selected more. So this is very important, and you can see this is how it works. Once you've connected, interestingly, you do have then the option to then just click use as well. So this is just one example in the B2B space, but we actually have other options, of course, across the B2C landscape as well, many other verticals. So this is another example of how it can work for booking. So if I just say I want to book a hotel in London for tomorrow, again, I've now got all these different options of different, travel companies, booking.com, TripAdvisor, Trivago, etc. And again, it's a longer list. So sometimes we do see a range in these list numbers. This is 5. Previously, we had 4. You can see here when I asked to book a taxi, I just get Uber, right? There's only Uber that's available there. But what's also really interesting is it is not always consistent. So you can see here, these are the top 5 that appear for this particular query, but we are getting it where actually this could switch up. So I'm getting Hyatt's option, for example, sometimes when I search this here. So like the ranking can change. So you need to basically understand, for your target prompts, are you appearing and what rank are you appearing for? And are you basically appearing at all? These are the kind of key things that you want to try and be understanding. Additionally, there's one more thing to show you, which is another option for one other way that we're seeing apps appear. And this is slightly more nuanced and a little bit is a little bit different in terms of the way that's done. So you can see here, if I ask a really ambiguous query, like I want to create a slide presentation, Claude will come up with different answer options. So you can see here, we even had a guide that goes through this, which you can share in the comments. If I want to click slide presentation, it will then give me these options, right? It will say like rough draft, client ready. And actually, sometimes it gives an app as an option for clarifying questions. Now, this is very interesting because, as you can see, if you are placed there, you really are the only app option. So at the moment, obviously they could add more to the list, but right now they are just giving one app option. And so you want to make sure that even for these kind of clarifying questions, you become the default interface. Obviously, you'd assume they're going to pick like the top ranking app in this case, but maybe not always. There's going to be huge long tails of queries that you want to start be appearing for, because I think one thing that we see when we work with our enterprise customers is there's just such a wide variety of different potential prompts that people can use. So yeah, these are the key things to mention. Like I said, as a summary, many different prompts that it's working for across B2B and B2C. You can get a range of different numbers in the list. The list ranking can vary. It can vary via prompt. And sometimes we're getting Notion at the top. Sometimes we're getting Monday at the top. It depends on the query. But Organic is live and this is happening. Final thing that I'd mention here is that, and this is very important to understand, the value that you put on a connection and then what happens after someone is connected. So if I had connected to booking.com already, then that means that it's already a connection I almost have downloaded. You can think about it like that. Now, because of the fact that you've got it downloaded, that does not mean that if I was to put that prompt in, it's going to use booking.com every time. What it means is that if I put that prompt in, it's going to still show me the list most of the time, but then it's going to have a use here. Now, use is obviously great because it shows that one, you're going to be top of the list, and then two, it shows that you've already used it, so you're more inclined to click. So if you're thinking about it from a marketing perspective, your goal should be, I want to connect and I want to drive a connection. Then I want to make sure, because I'm connected, that therefore I'm being used, I'm more likely to be used, but I want to make sure that I'm still top of the rank and I'm still appearing for these queries, because even though you've been connected and you've already been downloaded per se, others will appear. So others will still be appearing for these prompts. And obviously you want to make sure. And so obviously it's important to still appear, but it's also important to make sure your experience is still the best. Other people might say, oh, I wasn't enjoying the booking.com experience before. I'm then going to try another app. I might try TripAdvisor or vice versa. So even though you can get driver connection, other apps can still appear for a prompt. It won't just be the connected ones that appear. And therefore, it's really important to not just think about kind of the organic side. You need to think about the performance side. There's many factors that get into this. Now, that's everything that kind of sits across, how we're seeing this working. Like I said, we're running tests at scale on this as we speak, refined on top of the data that we've already had over the last 6 months. And we're going to be sharing all the data that we have very, very soon. Now, the way that I would think about this is, and this is a really, really important framing, we have defined this new era as something that we called agent discovery optimization. And we're releasing a full paper on this with top collaborators in the industry that speak about this topic. But in short, this is the way to think about this. AEO is what gets you mentioned. Agent discovery optimization is what gets you used. This is a whole new paradigm of search that's just opened up. So anyone that understands answer engine optimization, that is, the text that gets generated. And you want to make sure that you appear in that text, right? If I ask, for example, give me some suggestions of project management software. If there's two ways that this query could be, surfaced. One, it could just be the text, and it actually could just tell me within that text, what project management software does Claude think is best? And you can actually optimize to be found within that, right? So that's what you need to do here. So, for example, it's now chosen linear and height, right? For agency, it's chosen these ones. For docs, right? This is something that is a whole new industry called AEO, and you need to optimize to be found there. You need to create the right documentation. You need to be on Reddit. You need to be on LinkedIn. You need to understand how these systems differs per client are, deciding what text gets in there and then creating the right content systems to ensure that you appear. That is fundamentally different from the paradigm that we're seeing in relation to these apps. This is not about appearing for the text. It is about getting your tool used, and it is a different discovery paradigm, and it is a different method for actually getting you to be selected. So like I said, we call it agent discovery optimization. This is ensuring that your product gets selected when an agent needs to act. In the agent discovery era, discovery is not just about visibility, it is whether your product can be used, trusted, and invoked at the exact moment of intent. So like I said, we have written like a full research paper on this. We are going to be sharing it soon. This is like I said, new discovery paradigm, and there's many different factors and components that you need to know to optimize for it. And this is really the beginning of that. So it's cross pan, I should say. This is not just in relation to MCP. This is in relation to API, CLI, LLMS, TXT files. There's much that goes into this. Having a connector available and leveraging MCP and being available in these clients and then being organically found is one component there, and you can optimize for it today to make sure that your product gets found in this new era. Now, with that said, the base foundation of agent discovery optimization is understanding whether you appear or not. And so that is, I think, the first thing that we're very heavily focused on, because without the really good data, you can't optimize anything. So this is agentdiscoverability.com. And this is our analytics product that helps you to get a full view and be able to track, analyze, and improve whether your ChatGPT app and Claude connector is actually getting discovered, ranked, and used in the right conversations. The aim here is to make sure that your app can start to appear and be used for your target prompts to get you more users. And what we do is, like I said, we've been doing this work for the last 6 months. We've been at scale for all of the connectors and all of the ChatGPT apps, running mass simulations to understand how discovery and usage and querying is working. Now that organic is live, this is another layer that we can test. And really what we want to do is just bring insights to companies to understand, how you're appearing, and then that helps you to be able to optimize for it. Now, I'll run through this quickly. I'm going to be sharing lots more on this. So there's plenty more that you can see. Like I said, we work with a lot of the world leading companies in this space on this. So we're also learning a lot from those experiences and building that back into the platform. So first of all, this is what you're seeing in terms of a dashboard. And on the dashboard, you're able to see things like, connector discovery over time in comparison to your competitors. You're able to see your competitors and the recommendation percentages and the ranks. But the most important thing to understand here is really the flow that this goes through. This is like all the work that we do with our clients, all the work that we've had in this space, it all works off intent. So you need to understand, for the prompts that you're trying to target, are you appearing for those prompts? So the first thing that you're going to do when you get into the platform is you're going to set up these prompts. These are prompts that can be mass done, so at scale prompts done in a way that users actually use them, because we've been analyzing so much of how this stuff works. We understand how to do conversational testing. We understand how to help you to create prompts the users would actually ask, and to do that at scale. So for those prompts that are then getting generated that actually align to your intent, that are actually going to be how users use them, how do you actually appear for those intents? Those intents are going to be multi-turn. They're going to be ranged on a number of other factors that are important to consider. That is the basis of this. We then run those every single day live in the client, and then we understand, okay, how are you appearing, and how does that compare then to actually other competitors and things like this as well. So you don't have a view of yourself. You also have a view of yourself kind of in your category against your competition. You can add in different services. You can add in different competitors, and those competitors really could be anything. You just could track other components of the industry, but really you want to understand a lot of the time just in your category. Now, very importantly, we also track the discoverability gaps. So there might be stuff that you're really appearing well for, others that you might not be appearing so well for. So we also help you to surface some of those, particularly if we understand your highest value intents and where you want to be appearing and how to close that gap. So that's a very quick overview. If you want to have a full demo of the platform and sign up, you can do so, and I'll share a link in the comments. Now, the next thing to mention is we really see this as just the foundation of a flow to make sure that you can continue to appear for the moments of intent that matter for you. So understanding is really important. You need to have data that is actually accurate, at scale done, really well understood, well tested, if you do not have really strong data sets, then you won't be able to get the level of intelligence and the accuracy that you need. So doing this well is really, really important. The next thing is then understand how to optimize. So like I said, for the last 6 months, we've been actually testing live on ChatGPT apps that are in there, changes that they make, how that affects their results. But then what we've also been doing is working directly with enterprise customers, both in the B2B and the B2C side. So we understand really well what changes you need to make, how can you actually update it, and what we're testing now is actually refinements. So not only are we optimizing if your connector is already connected, how does it then appear and respond? But now we're adjusting to test, okay, once you actually change this metadata label, or you change this description, or you change this tool name, or you get a number of additional more connections, how does this all affect your ranking and discovery, right? So we want to help you have the data, and then you be able to optimize for that. This is going to be something that we bring online later. The first focus is on the data, but we do generate recommendations that you can directly enable and actually get this to work at scale. Now, something that I would mention here that I think is really, really important, and this is why everything that we don't do anything in local simulators. We only do stuff directly in the client. We've seen up to a 60 to 80% difference in terms of how apps perform when they perform live within the client compared to if it's done in local simulators. So if you really want to understand how your app's working, you need to do it live in the simulator. So that's how we've set up our platform. We only test live, so you really know how your app is appearing. That's really important for understanding how to optimize. You can only understand how to optimize if you're testing, properly how these tools are responding. And so all of our data is also premised on that. And I definitely suggest when you're optimizing to make sure that you are thinking about live testing in the client to further optimize. Like I said, in the data, you will get recommendations. I suggest updating those and then testing appropriately the feedback loop to see how your ranking is appearing. You can then check your ranking in our platform. Obviously we will advise and be able to help with how to A/B test properly. So you want to make sure you're isolating the things that you're testing so you have a really strong feedback loop. And the whole goal here is you're getting more discovered. So over time, what you want to be understanding is, okay, how is my rank actually appearing? How is it changing based on the changes I've made, and tracking those over time. Very importantly, this is a continuous loop. So system prompts change, models change, competitors change descriptions. They go after certain target prompts. You make changes. Did they work? Did they not? It is a continuous loop, a monitoring cycle, and lots you can do to start to understand it. So definitely sort of think about this, I suppose, as a continuous exercise to always have something that's available, that's working and being shown for your target prompts. That is everything that I wanted to cover today. Obviously, loads more to unpack here, and we have a huge amount coming. You can go now to agentdiscoverability.com and go and sign up to a demo. You can get started, and this will allow you, if you have an app live, to obviously get more data on it. But if you also want to just track competitors and understand the ecosystem and organic discovery, you can do that as well. I would love to hear from you. If you ever want to have a chat with me, ask any questions, please do reach out. I will share a link to get in touch in the comments. And we're at the beginning of a new discovery paradigm, and I'm very excited for companies to be able to finally get organically discovered and have their tools used in AI. You can also join our Discord and our community, which I'll share a link in the comments, and speak soon.